All right. Hello and welcome to And Still We Rise. This is our first event for And Still We Rise 2024, and we are so thrilled to be with all of you today. For those of you who I have not gotten to meet yet, I'm Destiny Magnet, the Programs and Outreach Manager with Churches for Middle East Peace, and I am joined by three incredible women and leaders who I am so excited to introduce to you in just a moment. Before we begin, in light of the moment of violence and suffering and grief that we find ourselves joining together today, I thought that it would be fitting to begin with an opening prayer. So I invite you to join in a moment of prayer and silence in whatever way feels most comfortable for you. O God of all justice and peace, we cry out to you in the midst of a pain and trauma and violence and fear which prevails now in the Holy Land. We ask that you be with all of those who need you in these days of turmoil. We pray for the dignity of all people and pray especially for those in Gaza as they contend with unimaginable grief and suffering. While we pray to you, O Lord, for a ceasefire and for the establishment of peace, we also call for you to bring justice and equity to the people of the Holy Land. Guide us into your kingdom, where all people might be treated with dignity and honor as your children. Lord, in your mercy, we pray. Amen. Thank you to all of you for joining me in that. And with this, I am very excited to introduce this as the launch to And Still We Rise, a women's empowerment initiative by Churches for Middle East Peace. We are joined today, as I mentioned, by three incredible speakers whose lives and work truly embody the spirit of peace building for justice in the Holy Land. Today, these three speakers will introduce you to our And Still We Rise initiative, share a little bit about themselves and their work, and give special attention to the catastrophic bombing that's been taking place in Gaza and some of the repercussions for Palestinians in Jerusalem and the West Bank. So without further ado, our first speaker is the Reverend Dr. Mae Elise Cannon, who many of you know as the Executive Director of Churches for Middle East Peace. She is also an ordained pastor in the Evangelical Covenant Church. She is, among many things, the author of several books, including the award-winning Social Justice Handbook, Small Steps for a Better World, and is the editor of A Land Full of God, Christian Perspectives in the Holy Land. Our second speaker will be Churches for Middle East Peace's new And Still We Rise coordinator, Tamar Haddad. A Palestinian Christian based in Jerusalem, Tamar is the author of the book, The Future of Palestine, How Discrimination Hinders Change. She is also the founder of YALA, a Palestinian student leaders network, which develops the leadership skills of up to 20 Palestinian undergraduates every summer in academic institutions. Finally, our third speaker we will hear from today is Shireen Awwad Hilal. Shireen is the director of Bethlehem Bible College's Community and Outreach and serves as a member of the CMEP And Still We Rise leadership team. Shireen began her career as a teacher at the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Beit Sahur and was a keynote speaker at CMEP's initial 2018 And Still We Rise Summit. I could say so much more about these women, but we are thrilled to have them with us today, and I'm sure they will share more. Before I turn it over to Reverend Dr. Cannon, I would also invite all of you attending to feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us where you're joining us from, and what interests you in our event today. And so with that, Mae, I will hand it over to you to kick us off.
Thank you, Destiny. And not that this is all about accolades of incredible women, but I do think And Still We Rise has really incredible women in it. And I think, when we look at history and we look at peace movements, so often women have been excluded from them. And so often when peace finally is realized, women have been integrated or have been a critical part of the process. And so I'm grateful Destiny is our new manager of outreach and partnerships or outreach and programs for Churches for Middle East Peace. And she is relatively new to the CMEP team, but is just doing such a great job. I'm grateful for her partnership in this program. And Still We Rise is a program that started in 2017. It was launched officially in Washington, D.C. in 2018. And I was thinking maybe we could even close this webinar with reading Mae Angelou's poem, of which the title is based. It's based on Mae Angelou's poem, Still I Rise, which is a poem about empowerment and a poem about us rising up into who God created us to be as women. And so that's where the title comes from. And so And Still We Rise is the term we use for CMEP's Women's Empowerment Program. We're also using that title for an event that will be happening, inshallah, the Lord willing, in November in Jericho in 2024. But I wanted to take just a moment and tell you a little bit of the history. So I mentioned it was launched in 2018 in Washington, D.C. One of the things that CMEP does every year is we have gatherings in D.C. that are advocacy summits. They're kind of our national gathering. Normally, somewhere between 100 to 200 people come together. And we decided for that year that all of the speakers would be women. And women, not talking about women's issues, but women who are experts in their own fields, women who, have PhDs and are have master's degrees. I mean, one of the things I love about Shireen is, how many Palestinians from Bethlehem have a master's degree from Tel Aviv, from an Israeli, university. And for her to do that, when you hear the stories of her husband taking care of, I think then she had two, she now has four, two little ones at home. One, how many Palestinian husbands would take care of the two little ones? But two, her having to commute back and forth from the occupied Palestinian territories, to get to an Israeli university. I'm sorry, I got distracted talking about how amazing Shireen is. I'm really talking about the 2018 summit. But we wanted to be able to highlight women like Shireen, who are so amazing in their own right, not because they're women, but because they have, they're professionals. And often in Palestine, but not only in Palestine, in the US, women don't have platforms. And so the goal was that this 2018 summit could be a platform. And so in Washington, D.C., we had about 15 delegates from the Middle East. And the summit in 2018, men and women attended. And I would say the vast majority of men who attended were amazing. We did have one man say it was discriminatory to have only women speakers. And so he boycotted the summit. It's true. But it was so powerful. And that summit had human rights workers from Israel. We had Bet Salem was present. We had human rights workers from Palestine, Defense for Children International. We had Christian women, who study theology and spirituality, and Bethlehem Bible College was present. We had leaders from Musalaha that does reconciliation. Najla Kassab came. She was one of the first women ordained in the Middle East. She's Lebanese. And it was so beautiful. Lebanese Christian women, Lebanese women and Palestinian women can't meet because Lebanon and Israel have been at war. And so for them to come together in Washington, D.C. to be able to see one another. And so the first day of that gathering was for Christian women, and we met and we got to know one another, and it was really, really beautiful. And in that context, the women from the Middle East said, can we do this, back home? Can we do this in the Holy Land? And then of course we had the 2-day summit where there were speakers. And then the third day was a day where we went and met with congressional offices the way we do at our advocacy summits. And then we were crazy enough that we had all of these delegates from the Middle East, and we sent them out all across the United States. I think we went to 5 different cities. And so we sent everyone out 3 by 3. I know Tamar and Destiny, who work for Churches for Middle East Peace now, they think we work hard now. And I'm like, you just wait till we do something crazy like this again. So we had, 5 different speaking tours happening all at the same time in cities all over the US. And many of you on the call, I see Mary Mobley's here. Who's one of our regional coordinators for CMEP. Many of you hosted us, and we met with churches, and we had speaking events, and we tried to do a day of fun. to be able to do outreach across the U.S. so Palestinian women, and human rights advocates in Israel could talk about what our work might look like to end the occupation, to advocate for liberation for Palestinians, which is all the more relevant, of course, in this moment today with everything that's happening in Gaza and happening in Palestine and in Israel. So the 2018 was really, really incredible. And we formed a leadership team. Initially, the idea was it would be Israelis and Palestinians. As the realities on the ground got more and more challenging, it was decided that we could have And Still We Rise in Israel, which there has been less of an appetite for that with our Jewish friends, but that we also could have an And Still We Rise leadership team in Palestine. There's less room right now for reconciliation work across the borders, particularly when so many of the fundamental issues of occupation and injustice and human rights abuses are not being addressed. And so the conversation right now and what we're talking about right now is with a leadership team that is Palestinian. There are 1 or 2 internationals who are a part of it. And Tamar is our new coordinator for And Still We Rise. And I'll talk about her in a moment. We're very, very excited about her working with us. And so this leadership team has been meeting. We had planned after 2018 to do a gathering in Jordan or a gathering, in the Middle East. We had planned it, of course, for the middle of COVID. We had many, many things that were planned, that came crashing down in the midst of that. But since then, I'm so, so grateful to Shireen and to others, who have continued to sit on the leadership team of And Still We Rise. And we now have re-strategized, I feel like this is the 4th iteration of And Still We Rise in the Middle East. And now the goal is for us to have a gathering in Jericho in November 2024. The idea is for internationals and for local Palestinians to come together. The gathering will focus on women and empowerment of women. It will be a 3-day summit. The first day will be men and women. And so we'll hear from some local pastors who will be mostly men. And then the second day and the third day will be for women only. And it focuses on solidarity between women. It focuses on hearing stories of women from Palestine and challenges women are facing, but also opportunities. And really, we're hoping that this movement will be an opportunity for us to strategize together. How can we support one another? How can we encourage one another? And so we've been looking for someone for probably since 2018, Tamar, to be a coordinator for this group. Every time I've come to Palestine, I'm always like, Shireen, we need to get the group together. And Shireen always calls these women, and we have the leadership team, but we have not had someone to help us organize and to help us coordinate. And so we've been praying for someone. And I was in a meeting last May, and Munther Itzhak said to me, I know a woman who I think would be great. And she's written a book about women and equality and justice. And she's Palestinian and she's fabulous. And so he introduced me to Tamar. And since then, we've gotten to know her and are grateful. She's now working full-time for Churches for Middle East Peace. And she's now our coordinator for this movement. And so we're so excited. I feel like we're just getting started. This is our first meeting. And I know we have hard things to talk about today too. So that's just a snapshot of what our vision is and what our hope is. And I hope we can be an encouragement, even in the midst of a time that's so devastating. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mae. Destiny, do you want to say something?
No, thank you, Mae. And now passing it on to Tamar, all you.
Okay, so I recently started working for CMEP, and I lived in the States for a few years, but I know what it's like to talk to an American audience about being Palestinian and working for Palestinian human rights. But I was really surprised to see CMEP's work when it comes to Palestine, because especially with peace organizations, it's really hard to get the message that Palestinians are under occupation and, they are struggling from different perspectives. So when I started working with them, my job was completely different. I was focusing only at the work of And Still We Rise. We are currently doing this webinar series, and we're also doing a podcast where we are going to host American and Palestinian women who are both knowledgeable about Palestine. And so it completely kind of changed because we shifted everything towards what's happening in Gaza right now, which I believe is really very important, and having a Palestinian voice on the team really does make a difference because it's coming from Palestinian ground, so it is a very powerful voice to have. Now I'm holding two caps right now. The first one is as a coordinator for CMEP, but the second one would be as the author of The Future of Palestine, How Discrimination Hinders Change. And Destiny can share the link in the chat. Now, I started writing this book because I really struggled whenever I introduced myself as a Palestinian in the States. I realized so many people don't know what is happening in Palestine, and they are not really familiar with years and years of the blockade in Gaza and the 75 years of occupation by Israel of Palestine. Now, I just want to note something, which is everything that I am going to say right now does not represent CMEP. It is my personal views, and I do represent Palestinians as well. Now, this whole thing of Palestine, I do want to talk about it a little bit because we have been seeing Palestinians not really humanized in Western media, and we've seen a lot more attention in Western and US media, especially in the beginning, towards the hostages that were taken by Hamas, the Israeli hostages. And so I just want to note that it didn't come from a vacuum, and that is what the UN chair said. There has been so many long years that led to what happened on the 7th of October. It didn't come from a vacuum. And that is years of oppression towards Palestinians have been, they don't have access to movement. There are so many checkpoints, a wall has been built. And it really all started with the UN somehow. Before 1948, yes, there were Zionist calls to have a national home for the Jews in Palestine, and that was in the late 80s. However, by 1948, the UN created a partition plan that allowed a Jewish state to happen. Now, little did the UN know that they created a problem by solving another problem. We know that the Jews were persecuted after World War II and after the Holocaust, and of course, none of that should have happened, and it's really, really sad. But it did lead to creating a national home in a way or another. It's debatable. You can look and read into that. But it kind of caused the problem of the occupation. And for the past 16 years, Gaza has been living in an open air prison. And right now, the actions that are going on have been non-precedented. So it's really hard. And I just want to share one last thing. First, what is happening on Palestinian ground? Actually, two main things. What is happening on the ground and what is happening on Gaza? Because on the ground, to me, there's Gaza, which is like the worst situation for a Palestinian right now. But there's also the West Bank, there's Jerusalem, and there are Arab Israelis, or what I refer to them as 1948 Israelis, who are the Arabs that live in the Israeli borders. Now, there has been a lot of settler attacks in the West Bank. A lot of the Israeli government has actually given weaponry to settlers and telling them there is an enemy within. That's what the Israeli government has shared, and there's no accountability to anything that those settlers do. This is the harvest season right now, so Palestinians go and harvest olives, which is a main resource of economy for Palestinians, and it hasn't been safe because they have been attacked. The farms have been damaged in so many different ways. Villages have been blocked by the government and also by settlers, so villages do not have access to food. And the worst part for us personally is that we cannot share what is happening. Other than censorship, our voices have been silenced, and it's not really safe for us to speak, so we are very careful about it. We want to share, like I have an American and an international audience, so I want to share. But me being from Jerusalem, it makes it hard for me to share, because there has also been so many detained Palestinians just for speaking up. And sometimes we look at the hostages and say, oh, there are 200 Israeli hostages, and they should not be hostages in the first place. And of course, like, we pray that they get back to their families, but why does the media give so much more attention to those, especially in the beginning, whereas there are thousands and thousands of Palestinian detainees who are tortured in prison? 2 of them have died because they are not given access to medical care as well. So the last thing I want to share is about my friends in Gaza. I recently had friends in Gaza, and it's hard for Palestinians to actually have Gazan friends. And where do we meet? We always meet abroad. I actually met them in the States. And just so you know, it's very rare for Palestinians from Gaza to have this opportunity. So I've been in many programs abroad, but always Gazans were like, by the end, they get denied for visas and stuff. So that was the first time I meet them abroad. And I've been trying to check in with them almost every day, but it makes me feel so sad, because like, I want to help them, but I can't. I want to check on them, but what will I really say? And one thing, the last conversation I had with one of them was like, please forgive me if I've ever done anything wrong to you. And I'm like, why would you say that? Like, you have been really great with me. But they are basically holding their last breaths. And sometimes, honestly, I feel like death might be better for them, because no access to water, electricity, even internet, they can share their story, they can share their voice, and they're living the worst possible moments of their life so far, and nobody should experience what they're experiencing right now. So I would like to end here, and Destiny, you can introduce Shireen, who is great. She is part of the leadership team, and it's been a pleasure working with her.
Thank you so much, Tamar, for sharing both your work and your personal experiences. And our prayers in action are with your friends in Gaza, absolutely, right now. And with that, I am thrilled to introduce and turn the mic over to our third speaker, Shireen. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Destiny. Thank you, Mae. It has always been a pleasure to not only work with you, but to consider as a family member, that's for sure. My cry is your cry, and my happiness is your happiness. Thank you all for those who attended. I want to divide my speech and sharing into 2 things: the importance of CMEP and why is it important, and how come that, since 2018 up to this day, I'm still part of CMEP. Is it that unique? Is there something unique about it? And the other thing, I will also share with you what is really happening on the real ground. The fact that, when you hear about something that people are going through, you feel sad, but when you go through the thing, it's even more sad. So I'll share with you a little bit about my experience losing my aunt in the Gaza war. In 2018, when I was invited by Mae, I didn't know how important that is. I still prepared my paper, and I went to Washington, D.C., part of the 15 other delegations from Palestine, which was so, so special. One, the reason I went, because I always believed in women, and I always believed that women have the same skills as men, and not here to compete with a man or anything like that. I'm here to stand side by side and work together. And it has been shown in my work with the Bethlehem Bible College and other places. That's one. Two, I wanted my voice to be heard, and CMEP was the platform where I believe that my voice will be heard. And I wanted to share why is it important to be part of CMEP, because there are two kinds of work. There's the work that can be on a small level, where you can just be part of a small community and you talk about something and then you discuss and then you let go certain things, concerns and so on. And there is a bigger, wider voice. And I saw that in CMAP. And why is that? Because we were able to go and meet with congressmen. We've never had such a chance. Every time I see, and this is something, and this is my call for you tonight, every time I see a conference taking place, it's just for us to be doing all these speeches. At this point in my life, I am fed up with speeches, okay? All the speeches that has been taking place now, nothing actually paid for Gaza. And this is something, let's just put politics aside. I'm not talking even about politics at this point. And thanks for Tamar, she actually said it very, very well. I'm talking about the humanitarian side of things, the human side of things, the fact that we're all created in the image of God and we all deserve to live properly and equally. And this is something that we don't have here in Palestine. So CMAP created a platform for us, created a platform where they believed in the bigger and the wider picture that we all need to have. And I have not had that before. I never thought strategically, the fact that I need to influence, chair members, people in position to be able to get what you want. It's very, very obvious now. Imagine, we are all, as Palestinians, we're all thankful for all these people in the streets that are marching for Palestine, that are marching for what is happening in Gaza, saying, stop the killing of children. But the reality on the ground, that the continuous killing and bombing, just now, UN school has been bombed. And why is that? Because the leaders are making the decision on behalf of the people and no one is stopping them. And that's why I do believe in CMAP. I do believe in CMAP because Mae Cannon, why do Mae Cannon need or should come every day to report on Gaza and the situation of Gaza and Palestine and Israel? Because she has the heart here. Her heart is here. And this is what makes it different, because she believes that one day, and I hope it's soon, that we will change. Things has to change, because it doesn't change all the Christians, not only Christians. And don't get me wrong, Christians will leave the country. And the Holy Land is not holy with no Christians, one. And also those who get the opportunity to leave, even non-Christians, they also will leave, because there is no hope anymore for the people. When I talk about a relative, my relative is not only my aunt who was killed. My relative are all the people, the innocent people that are mourning, and my family members that were killed in Gaza. There is no distinction between Christian and Muslim at this point. It's just what is happening is heartbroken, is unbelievable. And I just cannot stand what is happening. So that's why when I talk about CMAP, it's not the conference that you're really inviting me to come and enjoy a very nice hotel and be spoiled and all the, I kind of, surpassed all these things. It's about advocacy. It's about reaching people who needs to be reached. It's about telling the truth. Because if you want peace, I am not, and listen to this, my dear friends, even if you take it so personal, I am not interested in peace at this point. I am interested in ending occupation, because what is happening in Gaza cannot actually roll out or roll it up together and say, oh, well, let's seek peace. There is no sign of justice. There is no sign of righteousness into Gaza. How can I pursue and say, I want peace? The bigger picture, I do want peace, but reality on the ground, I want end of occupation. This is what I want. This is what I want. So I found this in CMAP. I found this platform where we spoke with no boundaries, where we spoke what we need to speak. There was no one to tell us, oh, please say this in favor of that and don't say this in favor of this. It was also a platform, and those who attended 2018, you can go back to the records. There were also Israelis who expressed their point of views. There were Palestinians who expressed their point of views. So there was nothing hidden. There's nothing called, oh, let's beautify the situation. There is nothing such. So that's why I really encourage you. We want to go for And Still We Rise 2014 in Jericho. And we want people from the states to come and join us because this is for a big purpose and this is how it should continue. I'm sorry if I'm too emotional. I'm just so mad at all of this happening right now in the country. We never ever thought that it's going to turn that way. But we also know, as Tamar said, that this has been 16 years of open air jail, of a prison that is just so big to the point that people were not aware. And I will tell you more about why do I also have a special, Gaza has a special place in my heart. And if you know Gaza, Gaza is also bordering with Egypt. And even the people of Gaza speak Egyptian, by the way, the dialect. And they even have the same kind of sometimes meals and dishes like mloukhia, which is something green but tasty, really. And they have very many connections. They have part of the sea. Let's not call it the sea, actually. They have part of the sea where sometimes they go and try to swim. And now those who are actually bordering Gaza, you would see that people are actually bathing into the sea and drinking from the same sea, which is really not even good to drink. But this is the situation there. But not so many people have access to that. This current situation in Gaza is horrible. You all know, you can follow all different, how do you call it, newspapers, podcasts, all these kinds of things. I will tell you only about my relatives because whatever happens to my relative is happening to everybody. I just called my cousin yesterday and I broke into tears because he's just a wonderful, handsome young man with a master's degree in economics. And he was weeping, crying. And I said, how can I help you? He said, there is nothing we can do. I have no hope. Imagine in your beginning 30s, you don't have hope. One. And he's weeping like anybody else who really is so emotional. They all became so emotional. And he said, the first thing we want is, he said, I wish I have painkiller. I wish I have any kinds of pills that would just put me high. At this point, even if they have weed, I would be happy for them. I mean, that's that bad. I wish I have even alcohol to just drink and forget everything. Of course, Gaza does not have such things. I'm just, trying to imagine, how you try to put yourself into the imaginary situation. This is what we have been discussing, him and I, because we are trying to get out of what is really happening. Less than 800 people reside in Gaza who are Christians. My family is divided into two parties. One party that is in the Latin Church and the other half is in the Greek Orthodox Church. They don't have that much of a communication or visiting as, we'd think because they're so frightened. They are, petrified of the situation. My aunt who passed away, she was a very close member to actually the church, the Orthodox Church. And I want to tell you something that is really, really so personal, but I want to share it. When my aunt came in April, we were discussing, her and I, and she said, Shireen, I live alone. At the moment, I live alone, but I do something every night. And I said, what do you do? She said, every night, I take a shower and I put perfume and I dress properly, just so good. And I go to sleep and I leave my door open. Listen to this. And I said, but why do you do such a thing? She said, because one day if I pass away and no one is around me, at least people who come into my room or come into my house, they would be able to take me, not bother to clean me or to take care of my clothes or anything. They would just put me to where I belong. I will die peacefully. And this was her, request. And she died next to her sister. They were sitting down. The whole block came into the back of her head. She walked, listen to this, she did not die immediately. She walked out of the whole, destruction. And people said she was the only survivor that was the first to get out of the robbers. And she sat down. She was taken to the hospital. The hospital she was taken to is Al Ahli Hospital, the evangelical hospital, the Anglican hospital. And guess what? Only 2 days ago, the whole unit of the X-ray unit was completely destroyed. So they looked at her and they thought, oh, she's wonderful. And she had inner bleeding. Nobody knew about it. She sat into the chair and then she asked for the nurse to come. And she talked to the nurse and she said, I am cold, but I'm so thankful that you take care of me. And while she was talking to the nurse, she passed away. My other aunt had, a whole massive brokenness into the chest and into the hip. And she was next to her dead sister for 24 hours before she was operated. And when she was operated, they did not even she was not even as a priority. She did not take the priority to take, painkillers. So she did surgery without anesthesia. And then you talk about it. It's not only because they're my aunts, I should be, so sad about it, but it was so personal to me because these are people I know. These are people that lived in dignity. These are people that were hoping to get the best ending in their life. So when I see the whole thing happening into Gaza, I put away all politics. I have no interest whatsoever, but I look at the humanitarian side of things. Are these people treated as humans? They're not. And my message to you at this point is because we lost all kinds of hope, let's say, but we still have to do something. We still have to do something. And one, we pray for Gaza. We pray for Palestine. And we pray for those also who are hurting from the Israeli side. Don't think we're vicious and we want people to be killed. This is not us. Two, we need to share as much as we can, as what CMEP is doing. We need to do it like on daily basis. We need to go and tell people it is time for you to share. We need to give. If we as Palestinians, and listen to this carefully, my dear friends, if we as Palestinians depend on organizations giving money to Gaza, we will be bankrupt. You know why? Because those who have been giving for us as Shepherd Society or Bible College are individuals, not organizations. We've had donors, partners of Bethlehem Bible College who froze their partnership because they might have a doubt or they think we might be affiliated with Hamas, which we're not, of course. We have so many different channels that we can get money to Gaza through the churches at least. And they froze their giving to us. So again, it's about you giving, it's about you praying, it's about you sharing, it's about CMAP also finding the right platform where we need to go to congressmen and talk to them about it and say, how can you live? How can you sleep at night when you know that all these innocent children are killed? I will stop here. I'm so sorry. I got so emotional, but this is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shireen. I don't have the words, but thank you for being with us today and for sharing with such honesty and vulnerability. We are so honored to have you with us today. And thank you to all three of our speakers. At this point, we have an opportunity to ask questions of any of our panelists. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. And when we were chatting before, I know Mae mentioned she may have a question for Tamar and Shireen. So if you would like to kick off the Q&A period, Mae, that would be lovely.
Sure. And maybe I'll ask this to both of you, Tamar and Shireen. I fluctuate, and I feel a bit guilty. I gave this introduction about the hope that I have in women and this program that I feel like is such a positive program. And my question has to do with our leaders in the US, let alone in Israel, right? They're doing such horrible things. And Churches for Middle East Peace and many of the groups we work with, we meet with the White House, and I was going to show you a picture from Ends Till We Rise in 2018. We met with the State Department, and there's flags, and we're meeting with members of Congress. But politics rules the day, people do not, right? And even President Biden, people ask, is he running for president? Right? Like he's making decisions that affect people's lives and take people's lives. And a lot of it has to do with an election, and a lot of it has to do with politics. And, even meeting with Arab states, we have high-level meetings with Arab states. And one of the reasons there was not a statement coming out of that Cairo meeting between the Palestinians, the Egyptians, and the Jordanians was politics, right? And Shireen, when you say, I don't care about politics, right? Like, of course we care about peace, but right now, we just need to stop killing. One of the things we've been saying is, I don't care what you call it. What happens when you turn off water from 2.3 million people? What happens, right? People die. People can't live without water. How is the world not in an uproar? An uproar. And all this nonsense about there's water turned on. There's not water. Water is not getting to people in Gaza, period. And we just had a board meeting, and we're having conversations about, and I'll put this article in the chat. There is an Israeli expert who studies genocide, and he's an Israeli who is an expert on genocide, and he is saying clearly this is genocide. And then there's an op-ed that's in response to this article that says, no, this isn't genocide, because if Israel was intentionally trying to kill more civilians, the death tolls would be higher. And the response says it's not genocide, it's ethnic cleansing. And I'm like, who cares if you call it genocide or ethnic cleansing? Thousands of people are dying, right? And so I guess my thought is, I often tell people, and I'm sorry, now I'm getting personal, but Shireen, I have no shame. People say to me, what gives you hope? And Shireen has 4 children. Who are like my children. One of them is in the US right now, and we want to go and just snatch her up because of the way she's being treated by stupid Americans. And I say often, despair is the luxury of the privileged. And so I will not despair, right? I will not despair. I guess my question is, Shireen, you talk about it being so personal. And on one level, there's politics. And on the other level, there's personal. How do we press forward and be mobilized by our hearts being invested, but also we have to be strategic. And I say this all the time, right? Part of why we haven't shouted genocide is because if you say genocide, nobody on Capitol Hill will listen to you. And now I kind of feel like there's no shame. Thousands of people are dying. It doesn't matter. We have to do whatever it takes. So right now, at 12:30 today, we are starting to do civil disobedience. We're starting to have pray-ins in front of the White House, religious people, clergy. We're doing pray-ins at the White House. We're now saying people aren't listening. So we're going to start, I'm not in DC yet. I will be there soon, but we're starting to say what's it going to take to get attention? How do you call attention to this issue? And I guess I'm just curious, I feel like if I'm fully present in my heart, I'm immobilized because I'm just heartbroken. But if I'm fully present in my head, I'm so removed, right? And so do you have wisdom about, maybe I'll just stop there. I don't know if that's even a clear question. And I apologize.
Yes, let me share this with you. By the way, this is the first webinar that I participate in. I have been approached by many people, even friends sending me messages to speak. And I ran out of words. I had nothing. I could not actually speak. I was, lamenting. I was crying all the days. I didn't know what to do. I was worried. I would look at my children and cry because I would think and put myself into the situation. What if this is my child? I went into all this dilemma. But in one move, it just clicked that, all these people that want to know about us, and some people that I have not even talked to for ages, like some people I haven't even been in contact with for even 15 years or something, are calling and so on. And I thought this is the chance where we need to speak, because we have nothing else. We cannot stop just saying, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's sad what's happening in Palestine. If we continue to do that, then Israel will continue to do whatever they want. Now, if we are pressuring, and also we're also educating others, we have to put pressure on Israel. Even with the small, slightest things, before we used to say, oh, why do we have to boycott certain products? I'm sorry to say it, but now, to me, it means a lot. I mean, I don't want a settler to still continue to harass and kill people for no reason, because I'm still supporting, the dairy things that are coming out of the settlement. So we started thinking, this is the time, because this is the time if we either, vanish and we either become just a memory or a history, or we have to continue to do something. And that gave me the motive. And I believe, my dear friends who are here today, I know you're here for a reason. It cannot be that you just, came to the webinar because you have to. And the reason is that you have something, you have a calling, and you either take it or you just become like any member or any number. And you don't want to do that. We reach a certain age in life that if we don't do it now, then when do we do it? This is how I see it.
Yeah, I second Shireen, and I would like to add that the people, by the end of the day, are the ones who make the change. History has proven that this is a revolution, and we see a revolution happening. And we might think that BDS wouldn't do anything, but look at the stock prices right now. They are really going down. And it's not just about, stocks, we don't care about that, but it really does affect, like if you mess with Israeli economy, it actually has a huge effect on them, and it can stop the war in a way. But other than the economy, we see protests all around the world, and it gives us hope. I'd say in the first week after the 7th of October, I was really devastated because I had friends around the world who would show support to Israel, and I was like really confused. I'm like, how did I befriend someone like that who's supporting genocide, ethnic cleansing, whatever you want to call it? But I've also been seeing a change in the way people have been viewing things, and I've been seeing also the world waking up in a way. So yes, no matter what you do, even if you listen, even if you share a message, even if you share a post, anything you do can make a difference.
Thank you to both of you. I'll again invite our attendees to put any questions you have either in the chat or the Q&A. But in the meantime, I also want to ask all three panelists, but especially Tamar and Shireen, what do you think the special role is that women have to play right now and all the time in change making? I know I've had great conversations with both of you on why women are particularly good change makers in a lot of cases and peace builders, and I would love to hear you speak a bit to that in our current moment and for all the time.
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind, we hear this saying, men make wars, but women lead the world in a better way, or something like that. I mean, that's not necessarily true, because there's a man and a woman right now at the White House, and they're both not doing anything positive when it comes to Palestinians. But I do believe that women can be great change makers and change leaders. Like right now, when I attend webinars as just as a listener, I've honestly realized that the majority of women, the majority of speakers, or the majority of organization leaders are women. Like I'd say 70% of them who were calling for the change were women. So they do have a huge role. I can't think of anything on top of my head right now, but Shireen, you have the floor.
I would say, of course, women for many reasons. One of them, if you are not a sister, then you are a mother. If you are not a mother, then you are a daughter. If you're not a daughter, then you are a grandma, and so on. All these things, you are actually the spine, I would say. You are the one that actually, put things together. You bring people together. You have a multitask. You can do things together. You are so innovative. You're so emotional. You cry when it's hard for you, and then you take a decision when it's time to take a decision. And I see all of this in women. And I see women are so good at that. The only thing that I really pity is the fact that they are not all given the platform or the opportunity to experience that. And that's the sad part. But other than that, I am so convinced that they're capable. And I don't have to keep preaching about it or saying things about it, but at least, women make a stand, and they want what's best for those who are around them. This is how I see it.
I think one of the things that encourages me about women, and this isn't always the case, right? Generalizations, can be damaging because they're not always the case, but I do think women can be much more collaborative. Now, I'm competitive, so, but I hope I'm a collaborative leader. And I think in that regard, there's so much potential, right? Who's the strongest in this way? Who has this strength? And so there's a way that we can come together uniquely that sometimes when men are leading, it's a little bit more of, competition about who has power or authority. Whereas when women are leading, it's more about who can do what and what can we do together, which I think is a great, great strength. And Destiny, maybe you could, the next question about what are some of the ways change makers collaborate and partner with humanitarian practitioners responding to crisis? I just came out of a board meeting today. Our board's been meeting at least once a week. We're meeting again tomorrow. Sometimes we meet 3 days a week. But one of the things we were talking about, and we're going to start doing this with the White House daily, and I would encourage people to consider doing this with your members of Congress daily, is just facts and statistics. Tell what's happening. OSHA, and I can put the link to this for the facts and statistics that come out daily. We get the number of deaths from Gaza. I do these daily reports videos every day, and I pull the information from a dozen different places. But you can use the OSHA reports or the UNRWA reports, and even just a 3-sentence note to your member of Congress. Last night, which by the way, there was a second attack on the Jabalia refugee camp, the one that the world was so upset about because several hundred people died and said it was a human rights violation. It was just attacked again, like indiscriminately. And so sending a note to your member of Congress that says, remember when I sent a note to you about this attack when several hundred people died? It was just attacked again. And just sending a note, it doesn't have to be 5 paragraphs long, right? I'm concerned about the deaths in Gaza. What are we doing, to promote a ceasefire? 300 people more died. Or the death toll today of children in Gaza is more than 3,000 children, or is 3,500 children, right? And you can get those numbers from us. But I think just stating the facts is one of the ways we partner with humanitarian practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Mae. Shireen or Tamar, do either of you want to add anything on to Joy's question that Mae touched on a little bit in the chat? Good. Well, in that case, I will see if any of you would like to give a final word. And then I loved Mae's idea of closing our time together by reading Maya Angelou's poem. So I'll open the floor one final time to you, and then I will read that poem for all of us.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to also add is, sometimes, you want the world to feel sorry for you. It's like, in the old days in Palestine, I'm sorry, I'm saying it in the old days, I used to be so mad at the people of Palestine when they, look at themselves as victims and they actually wear what's called the victimization mentality. And that itself hinders so many, things that we want to accomplish and achieve, because then we will blame, certain people, certain parties. But today I feel sorry for the Americans and I pity them for one reason, just one reason. I mean, there are so many reasons, but one reason is that all the hard work that these people are doing, their taxes are paid for war. The money that has been spent and sent to Israel, I wish that money was sent for peace rather than for war. Why do these people have to pay for that? Why do even the young American youth have to come to Israel to fight for Netanyahu? If we look at Netanyahu, we find that his son is in Miami. I think he's fighting for Israel. Yeah, right. So this is very pathetic and very sad. And I think this is even one thing that Americans can fight for. Why am I spending all my taxes to go into war? Why should we, be quiet about it? Why shouldn't we say, you know what? I want my taxes to be spent on the Americans or on America, but for certain purposes, not for war purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shireen. I would also like to end with a call to action. You as Americans have so much power. You can call your representatives to stop those taxes from supporting war and genocide. Destiny, my friend here, shared a lot of links. CMEP is doing something called Stand in the Gap, where you can give, donate, and advocate, and do so many, pray. There are so many different things you can do. And also, I'm not sure, Destiny, if you've shared the And Still We Rise fundraiser. Yeah, by the end of the day, we are here to make change, elevate women's voices, educate about Palestine, and to make the change. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I just put in the chat the link to the poem if anyone would like to follow along, but this is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Do you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes? Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines, digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you all for being with us today, and we are exactly at noon, so we will send you all with the rest of your day. But we are so grateful to all of you, and we look forward to welcoming you to future And Still We Rise events. Thanks, everyone.